The slap echoed across Riverside Park like a gunshot. Simone Ashford's head snapped sideways, her vision blurring white, then red. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. Around them, the Saturday afternoon crowd froze, children mid-laugh on swings, joggers suspended mid-stride, an elderly couple's conversation dying mid-sentence. Police Chief Marcus Holt stood over her, his hand still raised, chest heaving. His royal blue uniform stretched tight across his shoulders, 3 gold stars glinting on his collar. The memorial bench beneath Simone felt suddenly cold despite the September sun. "I told you to move," Holt said, his voice low and dangerous. Simone didn't touch her face, didn't cry out. She sat perfectly still, her ivory blouse now marked with a single drop of crimson from her split lip. Her eyes locked onto his, calm, unflinching, cataloguing every detail of this moment. A woman gasped nearby. Phones emerged from pockets like fireflies at dusk. "You should have listened," Holt continued, stepping back as if suddenly aware of the audience. His jaw tightened. "This bench is reserved for law enforcement. Posted signs everywhere." Simone's silence stretched between them like a blade. "You just made the worst mistake of your career," she said finally, her voice steady as stone. Holt's face twisted, confusion first, then contempt. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." The crowd pressed closer, a tightening circle of witnesses. Someone's phone chimed. A recording started. Holt glanced around, suddenly reading the faces surrounding him. Fear flickered across some. Others showed something harder. Judgment. He pointed at her, his hands still trembling with adrenaline. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Simone touched her lip, examined the blood on her fingertips. "Neither do you." 6 hours earlier, Simone had stood in her apartment overlooking the city, watching sunlight paint the courthouse dome gold. 3 weeks into her appointment as state court director, the youngest person ever to hold the position, and she still hadn't adjusted to the title. The weight of it, the responsibility. Her father's photograph watched from the bookshelf. Gerald Ashford, civil rights attorney, dead 5 years but still her compass. She touched the frame like a ritual before leaving. Riverside on a Saturday morning hummed with ordinary life. Farmers' market tents lined Main Street in emerald green and mustard yellow canopies. Coffee shops released cinnamon-scented steam. Simone had promised herself this. One normal morning before Monday's hearing consumed everything. The memorial bench in Riverside Park had called to her because it was quiet. Tucked beneath an oak tree near the fountain, brass plaque reading "In honor of fallen officers." She'd sat there many times during law school, studying while children played and couples strolled. It belonged to everyone. That was the point of public space. Marcus Holt had other ideas. For 20 years he'd ruled Riverside's police department like a personal kingdom. The newspapers loved him. Photogenic, quotable, always first at community events with that practiced smile. Behind closed doors, his department faced 17 internal complaints dismissed without investigation. 3 civil rights settlements quietly paid, a pattern invisible to everyone who didn't look. Simone had looked. She'd been looking for months. Monday's federal oversight hearing would determine if Riverside PD faced Justice Department supervision. Years of complaints about excessive force, racial profiling, evidence tampering, all compiled in folders now stacked in Simone's chambers. The hearing was supposed to be routine, procedural. Another case in an endless docket. Holt didn't know the woman reviewing his department's fate was sitting on his favorite bench. He didn't know she'd grown up in Riverside's East End, where his officers patrolled like occupiers. He didn't know her father had been beaten by cops during a traffic stop when she was 12. He knew none of this when he approached her that afternoon, irritation already hardening his features. "Excuse me," he'd said, his tone suggesting it wasn't a question. "That bench is reserved." Simone had looked up from her book, already reading the situation. The uniform, the stance, the assumption of immediate compliance. "It's a public park," she'd replied simply. "That's when everything started." Holt moved closer, his shadow falling across Simone's book. The plaque says it's a memorial for officers killed in the line of duty. You're disrespecting their sacrifice. Simone marked her page, set the book aside. I'm sitting quietly on a bench my taxes paid for. There's no reservation system for public furniture. His face darkened. I'm asking you nicely. You're not asking. You're ordering. Around them the park continued its weekend rhythm, but a few people had started noticing. A jogger slowed. A mother pulled her children closer, instinct warning her something was wrong. Do you know who I am? Holt's voice rose slightly. Should I? That question, the calm dismissal in it, ignited something in him. His hand went to his belt, fingers brushing his badge. I'm Chief Marcus Holt, Riverside PD. 20 years keeping this city safe. Congratulations, Simone said. I'm Simone Ashford, citizen. 33 years minding my own business. A bark of laughter escaped him, but there was no humor in it. You've got an attitude problem. I've got a book and a bench. You've got a problem with that. The confrontation had drawn a small crowd now, maybe 15 people forming a loose semicircle. Phones were emerging. Holt noticed, and his expression shifted. He was performing now, aware of his audience. Final warning, he said, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was menacing. Move or I'll move you. Simone stayed seated. You won't. Try me. The dare hung between them. Later, Simone would remember this moment, the exact second when Holt's ego overrode his judgment. She saw it in his eyes, the calculation, the certainty that his badge made him untouchable. He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her bicep, yanking upward. Simone resisted instinctively, her body refusing the violation. Holt pulled harder, his face reddening with effort and rage. Let go of me, Simone said, her voice cutting through the growing murmurs. You should have listened. She wrenched her arm free and stood facing him at her full height. They were nearly the same size. She refused to let him tower over her. For a moment they simply stared at each other. Then he slapped her. The crack of his palm against her cheek seemed to pause time itself. Simone's head snapped right, her hair flying across her face. Pain bloomed hot and sharp. The crowd gasped, a collective inhalation of shock. When she turned back to face him, blood trickled from her split lip. She didn't touch it, didn't give him the satisfaction. You're all witnesses, someone called out. A teenager, phone raised high, recording everything. Holt's confidence flickered, just for a second. Then his jaw set and he fell back on what always saved him, authority. She was trespassing and resisting, he announced to the crowd. Aggressive behavior. I responded appropriately. Nobody spoke. The silence felt like judgment. Simone remained standing, blood on her ivory blouse, her eyes never leaving his face. She was memorizing everything. The tremor in his hand, the sweat on his forehead, the way his breath came too fast. We're done here, Holt said, finally backing away. Consider this a warning. He turned and walked toward the parking lot, his stride deliberately casual, trying to look unbothered, in control. The crowd parted for Simone instead. Simone sat back down on the bench, her legs suddenly unsteady. The crowd hovered, uncertain, wanting to help but not knowing how. A woman offered tissues. A man asked if she needed an ambulance. She waved them off gently, needing space more than sympathy. Her cheek throbbed with each heartbeat. Her lip had already started swelling. She could feel her father's presence like a physical weight, his voice in her head, reciting the lessons he'd drilled into her since childhood. Power without accountability is tyranny, Simone. And tyranny always believes it's invincible. Until someone holds up a mirror. She'd been 8 when he first explained why some people wore badges like crowns. 12 when she watched officers beat him during a traffic stop, their fists landing while they shouted about respect and compliance. 15 when his lawsuit was dismissed. Insufficient evidence despite her mother's photographs, despite hospital records. Her father had turned that rage into purpose. Became the attorney who made police departments sweat. Who won cases everyone said were unwinnable. Who taught his daughter that the law could be a weapon for the powerless if wielded correctly. Now sitting on this bench with blood on her blouse, Simone felt that legacy settling onto her shoulders. The teenager who'd filmed everything approached cautiously. "Ma'am, I got it all. The whole thing. Want me to send it to you?" Simone looked at him. Maybe 17, wearing a Riverside high hoodie in burnt orange. His phone still clutched tight. "What's your name?" "Marcus." Sorry, DeAndre. "DeAndre Marcus. DeAndre, you did good work today. Send that video to your email first. Back it up." "Then yes, I'd like a copy." His eyes widened. "You gonna sue him?" "I'm going to do something," she said quietly. The fountain behind them continued its endless cycle. Water rising, falling, rising again. Simone watched it, finding its rhythm calming. She wasn't angry, not yet. Anger came hot and fast and burned itself out. What she felt was colder. More patient. Holt had no idea who he'd struck. That ignorance gave her an advantage. She stood, collected her book, and walked to her car without looking back. Her reflection in the window showed the damage, bruise already darkening, lip split and swollen. She took a photo with her phone. Documentation. Evidence. Then she drove home, her mind already working through Monday's hearing, already seeing how this moment would reshape everything. Simone's apartment felt too quiet after the park's chaos. She stood in her kitchen, pressing ice to her face, staring at her father's photograph without really seeing it. Memory pulled her backward. She was 16, sitting in the gallery of Riverside Superior Court, watching her father cross-examine a police lieutenant accused of planting evidence. Gerald Ashford moved through the courtroom like a conductor, each question precisely calibrated, building toward an inevitable crescendo. "You testified the drugs were in plain sight, correct?" "Yes." "In the defendant's right jacket pocket?" "Correct. Yet the body camera footage shows you reaching into the left pocket first. Why is that?" The lieutenant had stammered. The jury had leaned forward. Justice had felt possible. That case launched Gerald's reputation. More families came. People who'd been beaten, falsely arrested, terrorized by the very institution meant to protect them. He won more than he lost, which in that arena counted as miraculous. "The system protects itself," he'd told Simone one evening, reviewing case files at their kitchen table. "But systems are made of people, and people can be held accountable. That's where we fight, in the narrow space between immunity and impunity." Riverside PD had been on his list when the heart attack took him. 5 years ago, collapsed in his office surrounded by complaint files and settlement documents. Simone had been finishing law school, already following his path, already understanding that some battles outlived their warriors. Now she stood in his shadow, carrying forward work he'd started. The state court director position had shocked everyone. She was 33, barely a decade into her career. But her record spoke volumes. Constitutional law specialist, civil rights advocate, architect of reform protocols in 3 districts. When the governor appointed her, editorial pages exploded with hot takes about inexperience and political correctness. Simone hadn't cared. She'd seen the docket waiting for her. Riverside PD's federal oversight hearing was scheduled for her 2nd month. Coincidence, perhaps, or perhaps someone in the Justice Department knew exactly what they were doing. The department's file read like a blueprint of systemic abuse. Officer-involved shootings with no investigation, evidence rooms with mysterious gaps in chain of custody, community complaints dismissed as misunderstandings, 3 separate civil rights lawsuits settled for 6 figures each, taxpayer money buying silence, and Marcus Holt presiding over all of it, protected by political connections and a carefully maintained public image. Monday's hearing would determine if federal oversight was warranted. The Justice Department representative would attend, review evidence, hear testimony. Simone's role was procedural: facilitate the hearing, ensure proper protocols, issue findings. Normally routine work, but nothing was routine now. Her phone buzzed. The video from DeAndre had arrived. She watched it once, then twice, noting details. The angle captured everything. Holt's aggression, her calm refusal, the escalation, the slap that ended with her bloodied but unbowed. Already it had reached social media. Simone scrolled through Twitter, watching the view count climb. Hashtags were forming. So Riverside PD, so police accountability, justice for Simone. Though nobody knew her name yet, the narrative was writing itself without her. That would change Monday morning. Sunday morning arrived, grey and cold autumn asserting itself. Simone sat in her chambers at the courthouse, the building empty except for security. Her desk held 3 separate stacks of documents: Holt's disciplinary file, Monday's hearing agenda, and her father's old notes on Riverside PD. She'd found those notes while clearing his office, a manila folder labeled simply Riverside. Inside, complaints dating back 15 years. Names she recognized from recent files. Patterns of abuse that hadn't changed, only adapted. Her father had known. He'd been building something, and died before finishing. The video had exploded overnight. 7 million views. National news outlets calling it disturbing and emblematic of systemic issues. Riverside's mayor had issued a statement calling for calm and promising investigation. Holt himself had released a statement through his attorney. Misunderstanding. Responding to aggressive behavior. Full cooperation with any inquiry. The usual playbook. Deny, deflect, delay. Her assistant, Maya, had called 3 times Saturday night, begging her to go public with her identity. They need to know you're not just some random woman. You're the state court director, the person running Monday's hearing. Simone had refused. Not yet. Let him think he's safe. Now reviewing the hearing agenda, she felt the pieces aligning. The Justice Department's oversight review would proceed exactly as planned. Holt would attend, expecting another bureaucratic ritual. His attorneys would present their standard defenses, isolated incidents, bad apples, improvements underway. Then she would enter the courtroom. The irony was almost poetic. The man who'd assaulted her in a public park, confident in his immunity, had no idea she held his department's fate in her hands. The hearing she'd been preparing for weeks had suddenly become deeply, unavoidably personal. Her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered anyway. "Director Ashford." A woman's voice, tentative. "My name is Patricia Chen. I'm an attorney. I represent 3 plaintiffs in civil suits against Riverside PD. Cases settled under confidentiality agreements. I saw the video." "That was you," Simone said, nothing waiting. "I need you to know something," Patricia continued. "Those settlements. Holt personally negotiated them. Offered money in exchange for silence. My clients wanted to fight, but they were scared. He threatened them. Said he'd make their lives hell if they went public. Why are you telling me this?" "Because Monday matters. Because maybe someone finally has the power to do what my clients couldn't. And because—" Patricia's voice cracked slightly. "Because one of my clients was 17 when officers under Holt's command beat her during a traffic stop. She's never been the same." Simone closed her eyes. "What's her name?" "Destiny Williams. She's willing to testify Monday if you need her." The pieces multiplied. 3 settled cases became 3 potential witnesses. A pattern of abuse became documented evidence. Holt's personal involvement in silencing victims became proof of consciousness of guilt. "I'll be in touch," Simone said. After hanging up, she pulled Holt's disciplinary file again, reading between the lines. 17 complaints dismissed. But dismissal wasn't exoneration. It was bureaucratic burial. Each complaint had a name, a date, a story that mattered to someone. She opened her laptop and started typing. Not a response to the video. Not a statement to the press. A legal brief. Methodical, documented, devastating. Every complaint Holt had escaped. Every settlement he'd negotiated. Every time the system had protected him instead of the people he'd hurt. By Sunday evening, her chambers felt like a war room. Files everywhere, notes covering her whiteboard. The video playing on loop, volume muted, Holt's hand frozen mid-slap in the still frame. Her bruise had darkened to deep burgundy, impossible to hide. Good. Let it show. Let everyone see exactly what impunity looked like when it felt safe enough to strike. Maya arrived with coffee and concern. The media's camped outside. 20 news vans. They know the hearing's tomorrow. They don't know you're involved yet. They will, Simone said. First thing tomorrow morning. Are you sure about this? Once you walk into that courtroom, everything changes. His lawyers will claim bias. They'll try to get you removed from the case. Let them try. Simone looked at her father's photograph, then at the video still paused on her screen. 2 images of the same fight, separated by time but identical in meaning. He thinks the badge protects him, she said quietly. Tomorrow we show him what accountability looks like. Marcus Holt watched the video for the 20th time, nursing his 3rd whiskey. His home office felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in. His wife had stopped asking questions hours ago. It looks worse than it was, he muttered to himself, pausing on the moment before the slap. From this angle you couldn't see her refusal to move, couldn't hear her dismissive tone. The edited version spreading online made him look like a monster. His attorney, Richard Brennan, had called it manageable, standard PR crisis. Release a statement, express regret for the misunderstanding, emphasize 20 years of service. Let it blow over like everything else. The hearing Monday is perfect timing, Brennan had said. Show the feds how cooperative you are. Professional by the book. This video will be forgotten by Wednesday. Holt wanted to believe that. He'd survived worse. The shooting in 2019 that Internal Affairs buried. The excessive force complaints that mysteriously disappeared from official records. The settlements his department paid while he got promoted. The system protected its own. Always had. His deputy chief, Sarah Martinez, had been less optimistic. She'd called Sunday morning, voice tight with concern. Chief, the woman in the video, nobody knows who she is yet. That worries me. Why should it matter? Because people who stay anonymous usually have a reason. Lawyers, politicians, people with leverage. Holt had dismissed her. She's nobody. Probably embarrassed. Knows she was trespassing. Now alone with his whiskey and the video evidence of his worst impulse, doubt crept in. The way she'd looked at him after the slap, not afraid, not broken, calculating, like she was memorizing his face for later use. You just made the worst mistake of your career. He replayed those words, searching for meaning. Activist rhetoric, probably. Empty threat from someone who didn't understand how power actually worked. His phone buzzed. Text from Mayor Aldridge. Ride this out. Don't engage. Monday's hearing goes smoothly. This disappears. Holt texted back, understood. He finished his whiskey and opened his closet. His dress uniform hung there, pristine and pressed, gold stars polished to mirror shine. He'd wear it tomorrow. Project Authority. Remind everyone who held power in Riverside. The hearing was a formality anyway. Some junior administrator would oversee procedural motions, while federal observers took notes. His attorneys had prepared responses to every anticipated question. Clean record, community support, ongoing improvements to training protocols. By Tuesday, he'd be back in control. The video would be a footnote. He almost believed it. Monday morning arrived with television helicopters circling the courthouse. Simone watched from her chamber's window as protesters assembled, 2 distinct groups separated by police barriers. One side waved back the blue signs. The other held images of victims, faces of people who'd filed complaints against Riverside PD. Her bruise had deepened overnight to purple-black, impossible to conceal. She'd stopped trying. Let them see. Let Holt see what his impunity had wrought. Maya knocked softly. They're asking if you'll make a statement before the hearing. No statement. They'll understand soon enough. The Justice Department representative is here. Agent Michaels. She's asking about security protocols. Tell her standard procedures apply. This hearing proceeds exactly as planned. Simone's phone vibrated. Text from an unknown number. You don't know what you're dealing with. Drop this or your family pays. She screenshot it, forwarded it to courthouse security, deleted it. Not the first threat. Wouldn't be the last. Her father had received dozens during his career. Fear was the tool of the desperate. Another text, this one from Patricia Chen. Destiny Williams is in the building. 2 other former plaintiffs showed up unannounced. They want to testify. They saw the video and they're ready to speak. Simone closed her eyes, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. These women had been silenced by settlements, by fear, by a system that valued reputation over truth. Now they were here, ready to break that silence. Her father's voice echoed, "Justice doesn't arrive on its own. Someone has to drag it into the light." She straightened her blush-pink blazer, touched the small pin on her lapel, her father's attorney badge, worn now as talisman. Her reflection in the window showed a warrior dressed in courtroom armor, bruise worn like a medal. The hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock. She'd arrive at 8:55. Not early. She wasn't performing for cameras. But precisely on time, as justice should be. Maya appeared again, face pale. "Director, Holt's attorneys filed an emergency motion. They're requesting your recusal." "On what grounds?" "They just found out. Someone told them you're the woman in the video. They're claiming bias, conflict of interest, prejudgment. The motion's being filed right now." Simone smiled, cold and sharp. "Good. Let them put it on the record. Let them argue I can't be impartial, because I was assaulted by the man I'm evaluating. Let them explain how being a victim disqualifies me from seeking accountability. But what if the federal rep agrees? What if they remove you? They won't, because this hearing isn't about my assault. It's about 17 other complaints, 3 settled lawsuits, and a pattern of abuse spanning 2 decades. My experience just provided the most recent evidence." She gathered her files, each one a weapon carefully forged. Holt's disciplinary record, complaint transcripts, settlement agreements with confidentiality clauses she'd subpoenaed. Body camera footage his department claimed didn't exist. Federal guidelines for oversight his department had violated 47 times in 3 years. The video of Saturday's assault was just the opening act. "It's time," Simone said. She walked toward the courtroom, heels clicking against marble floors, each step measured and deliberate. Behind her, Maya struggled to keep pace. Ahead, courthouse security cleared a path through press and protesters. The courtroom doors stood closed, heavy oak carved with the scales of justice. Simone pushed them open. Inside, the gallery was packed, standing room only, every pew filled with community members, attorneys, activists, officers in uniform. The air thrummed with tension and anticipation. Cameras lined the back wall, red lights blinking. Simone walked to the bench at the front, feeling every eye track her movement. Her bruise caught light from the high windows. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then Marcus Holt entered through the side door. He stopped dead when he saw her. His face drained of color, gray beneath his tan. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came. Behind him, his attorneys froze. Recognition hit them like electricity, sudden, violent, illuminating everything they'd misunderstood. The gallery erupted in whispers. Phones appeared despite the ban on recording. A woman in the front row began sobbing. Simone recognized her from the case files. Destiny Williams, 17 when Holt's officers beat her, 23 now and still carrying those scars. "All rise," the bailiff called. The room stood as one. Simone took her seat at the bench, her father's badge catching light. She looked directly at Holt. Let him see her bruised face, let him understand exactly what was about to happen. "Please be seated," she said, her voice carrying to every corner. "This hearing of the Federal Oversight Review for Riverside Police Department is now in session. I'm Director Simone Ashford, State Court Director presiding." Holt's attorney, Brennan, shot to his feet. "Your Honor, We filed an emergency motion for your recusal. Given the events of Saturday—" "Motion denied," Simone said calmly. "But you can't, there's clear bias. Counselor," her voice cut like steel, "I am presiding over a review of systemic issues within Riverside PD spanning multiple years. My personal experience on Saturday merely adds to the evidentiary record. If you believe being a victim of police violence disqualifies someone from seeking accountability, I suggest you reconsider your understanding of justice." Agent Michaels, the Justice Department representative, spoke from the Federal Observer's table. "The motion for recusal is noted for the record but denied. Director Ashford's appointment and authority are unquestioned. This hearing will proceed." Brennan sat down, his face flushed. Beside him, Holt stared at the table, his jaw working silently. Simone opened the first file. "We'll begin with complaint number 17-043. Filed March 2023 by Destiny Williams, age 17 at the time, alleging excessive force during a traffic stop." Destiny Williams approached the witness stand slowly, her hands trembling. She wore a lavender dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. When she sat, she looked directly at Holt, and Simone saw years of buried trauma rising to the surface. "Ms. Williams," Simone began gently, "thank you for being here. I know this is difficult. In your own words, please describe what happened on March 14, 2023. Destiny's voice started soft, but grew stronger. "I was driving home from work. Late shift at the diner. I got pulled over on Henderson Street. Broken tail light," the officer said. "I was polite. Had my license and registration ready." She paused, gathering herself. "But when I reached for my phone to text my mom, one officer grabbed my arm. Said I was reaching for a weapon. They yanked me out of the car. I tried to explain, but they threw me against the hood. One officer's knee on my back. I couldn't breathe. I kept saying I can't breathe, but they didn't stop. The courtroom had gone completely silent. I filed a complaint the next day," Destiny continued. "Bruises everywhere. Hospital documented everything, but the department said the officers followed protocol. Case dismissed. Then Chief Holt's office called. Offered a settlement. $20,000 if I signed a confidentiality agreement and dropped everything." Simone leaned forward. "Did Chief Holt personally contact you?" "Yes, he came to my apartment. Said he understood I was upset, but these things happen. Said if I kept pushing, they'd find reasons to make my life difficult. Traffic stops, citations." He smiled when he said it, like it was friendly advice. "What did you do?" "I took the money. I was scared. I was 17 and he was the police chief. Who would believe me?" Simone turned to Holt, who sat rigid, staring at nothing. "Chief Holt, do you recall this conversation?" Brennan stood. "Chief Holt declines to answer at this time. This isn't a criminal trial, Counselor," Simone interrupted. "This is an administrative review. Chief Holt is required to cooperate. I'll ask again. Do you recall personally negotiating a settlement with Ms. Williams?" Holt's voice came out rough. "I don't recall the specifics. Ms. Williams recalls specifics quite clearly. She recalls you threatening her future cooperation with law enforcement if she pursued her complaint. Does that refresh your memory?" Silence. Patricia Chen stood from the gallery. "Your Honor, I represent 2 other women who have similar stories. Former plaintiffs in settled cases. They're here and willing to testify despite confidentiality agreements they were coerced into signing." Agent Michaels made a note. The federal guidelines were clear. Patterns of coercion indicated systemic problems requiring oversight. Simone called the next witness. Angela Rodriguez, 31, pulled over in 2021. Same story. Minor traffic violation escalating to violence. Complaint dismissed. Settlement negotiated personally by Holt. Then came Keisha Thompson, 26, whose brother had been beaten during an arrest. Same pattern, same threats, same silencing. With each testimony, Holt seemed to shrink. His uniform, so carefully pressed that morning, looked like a costume now. The gold stars felt like accusations. "Let's discuss the video from Saturday," Simone said finally, playing it on the courtroom screens. The crowd watched in complete silence as Holt's hand connected with her face, as blood appeared on her ivory blouse, as she remained standing despite everything. "This occurred in a public park," Simone narrated, "during a dispute over a memorial bench open to all citizens. Chief Holt ordered me to move despite no legal authority to do so. When I declined, he escalated to physical violence. This was witnessed by approximately 15 people and recorded by multiple devices." She paused the video on Holt's face, captured mid-slap. "This is what impunity looks like. This is what happens when power believes itself untouchable." The courtroom felt suspended in amber, everyone frozen, waiting. Simone spread documents across the bench like cards in a game Holt had already lost. "Let's examine the pattern," she said. 17 internal complaints against Riverside PD under Chief Holt's leadership. 0 sustained. 0 disciplinary actions, statistical impossibility or systemic corruption. She pulled up a chart on the screen. Red bars showing complaints, empty space where consequences should have been. 3 civil rights lawsuits settled for a total of $470,000 in taxpayer money. All negotiated personally by Chief Holt. All included mandatory confidentiality clauses. All involved allegations of excessive force against people of color. Agent Michaels leaned forward, her pen moving rapidly across her notepad. Body camera footage from 23 incidents, mysteriously corrupted or unavailable. Evidence room logs with unexplained gaps. User force reports contradicting witness statements in 14 separate cases. Simone turned to Holt directly. "Chief, your department's own policies require body cameras during all public interactions. Why was your camera off on Saturday?" Holt finally looked up. "I wasn't on duty. You were in full uniform. You identified yourself as police chief. You invoked your authority to order a citizen off public property. Were you on duty or not?" He faltered. "I was representing the department, so your camera should have been active. Where's the footage?" Brennan stood again. "Your Honor, this is beyond the scope." "It's exactly the scope," Simone cut him off. "This review examines whether Riverside PD has systemic accountability problems. The chief of police assaulting a citizen while his camera remains conveniently off. That's the definition of unaccountability." She pulled another document. "Federal guidelines require police departments to maintain integrity in evidence handling, transparency in disciplinary procedures, and impartiality in complaint investigation. Riverside PD has violated these guidelines 47 times in 3 years under Chief Holt's leadership." The numbers landed like blows. The gallery shifted, energy changing from anticipation to inevitability. Ms. Williams, Ms. Rodriguez, Ms. Thompson, 3 women silenced by settlements. How many more were there? How many complaints disappeared before they could be filed? How many people declined to come forward because they'd seen what happened to those who did? Simone stood, the bruise on her face now the most powerful evidence in the room. "I am the state court director. I have prosecutorial immunity, judicial protection, and professional standing. Yet Chief Holt struck me in broad daylight because he believed his badge made him invincible. If he would assault someone with my authority, imagine what he's done to people without it." The courtroom erupted, not in noise, but in that terrible silence that comes when truth finally speaks after years of being muffled. Agent Michaels stood. "Director Ashford, the Justice Department has heard sufficient evidence, based on testimony presented, documented patterns of misconduct, and clear violations of federal oversight guidelines. We recommend immediate federal intervention in Riverside Police Department operations." Holt's face went white. "Furthermore," Michaels continued, "we recommend criminal investigation into Chief Marcus Holt's actions on Saturday, October 24th, as well as his potential obstruction of justice through witness intimidation related to prior complaints and settlements." Brennan was on his feet. This is prejudicial. You can't, we can and we are, Michael said flatly. 20 years of misconduct doesn't disappear because it was hidden well. Director Ashford's experience simply illuminated what was always there. Simone returned to her seat, feeling exhaustion and vindication warring inside her. Chief Holt, you are hereby suspended from duty pending criminal investigation. Your badge and service weapon will be surrendered to the bailiff. Federal oversight of Riverside PD begins immediately, with full audits of complaint procedures, evidence handling and use of force policies. She looked at him one final time. You asked if I knew who you were. The question was wrong. You should have asked who I was, because the answer would have changed everything. Holt stood slowly, his movements mechanical. The bailiff approached. Holt's hands trembled as he removed his badge, his gun, his authority. The gold stars that had protected him for 20 years meant nothing now. As he was escorted out, he passed Destiny Williams. She met his eyes and didn't look away. Neither did Angela Rodriguez. Neither did Keisha Thompson. The women he'd silenced had found their voices, and justice had finally listened. The hearing ended at 3:47 p.m., 6 hours that dismantled an empire. Outside, the crowd had swelled to hundreds. News helicopters circled. The mayor held an emergency press conference, announcing full cooperation with federal oversight. The city council called for independent investigations into all settled lawsuits. Simone stood in her chambers, finally alone, staring at the photograph of her father. We did it, she whispered. It took 25 years, but we did it. Maya knocked gently. There's a crowd waiting to thank you. Community leaders, former plaintiffs, activists who've been fighting this for decades. Tell them I'll meet with them. But give me 10 minutes. She walked to the window. Below, protesters from both sides had merged into a single group. The division had shifted, no longer about supporting police versus demanding accountability, but about recognizing that true justice required both protection and responsibility. Destiny Williams stood at the center, speaking to reporters. The terrified 17-year-old who'd accepted a settlement was now a woman reclaiming her story. Beside her stood Angela and Keisha, no longer silenced, no longer afraid. Simone's phone buzzed. Text from Patricia Chen. 6 more former plaintiffs have contacted me. They want their confidentiality agreements voided. They want to testify. The floodgates had opened. By evening, Riverside PD headquarters was swarmed with federal agents conducting audits. Holt's office was sealed as a crime scene. Officers who'd operated under his protection now faced scrutiny. The system that had sheltered abuse for decades was finally being dismantled. Simone returned to Riverside Park as the sun set, painting the sky burnt orange and gold. The memorial bench sat beneath the oak tree, unchanged by everything that had happened there. She sat down, touching the brass plaque honoring fallen officers. They deserved better, she said to the empty air. They deserved a department that honored their sacrifice through integrity, not by protecting corruption. An elderly woman approached, walking slowly with a cane. I saw what he did to you. I wanted to help, but I was afraid. It's okay, Simone said gently. No, it's not. I've lived in Riverside 60 years. I've watched those men abuse their power for most of them. I was too scared to speak up. But you weren't. I had advantages most people don't. I had education, position, protection. I could fight back. The woman smiled sadly. And you fought for all of us. That bench is yours now, whatever it says on the plaque. After she left, Simone sat in the gathering darkness, feeling her father's presence stronger than ever. The bruise on her face still throbbed. It would fade to dusty rose, then yellow, then disappear. But the change it catalyzed would remain. Her phone lit up with messages, solidarity from judges across the state, support from civil rights organizations, interview requests from national media. She ignored them all for now. In the quiet park beside the fountain's eternal cycle, Simone Ashford simply breathed. Justice wasn't a moment. It was a process. And today that process had finally worked. 3 weeks later, Simone returned to the bench one final time. The park had changed subtly. New signs explaining that all public spaces were open to all citizens. A community oversight committee had been formed. Riverside PD operated under federal monitoring that would last years. Marcus Holt faced criminal charges. His trial date was set. 17 complaints that had been buried were being reinvestigated. The 3 women he'd silenced had become the face of reform. Simone touched the memorial plaque, reading the names of officers killed in the line of duty. Good people who'd believed in justice. Their legacy deserved a department that matched their sacrifice. Power without accountability is tyranny, she said quietly, echoing her father's words. But accountability without courage means nothing. Someone has to stand up. Someone has to refuse to move. She thought about that moment, Holt's hand connecting with her face. The choice to remain standing. The decision to let justice work rather than let fear win. The system wasn't fixed. One hearing couldn't erase decades of corruption, but it had cracked the foundation. Light was getting in, and where light went, change followed. Her father's voice seemed to whisper through the autumn leaves. Justice doesn't arrive on its own. Someone has to drag it into the light. Simone stood, ready to return to work. More cases waited. More departments needed oversight. More people needed someone willing to stand when ordered to kneel. The badge on her lapel caught the setting sun, turning gold like the stars Holt had surrendered. But her badge meant something different, earned through service, not taken through force. A symbol of the law as it should be, not as it had been wielded. She walked away from the bench, her shadow stretching long behind her. The park resumed its rhythm. Children playing, couples walking, life continuing as it should. But something fundamental had shifted. They'd learned that badges don't grant immunity. That silence protects abusers. That one person standing firm can break a system that seemed unbreakable. And they'd learned that sometimes the person you underestimate is exactly the one who'll hold you accountable. Simone's final thought echoed like a promise to everyone watching. They think the badge makes them untouchable, until it doesn't.